In this video, we will go over how to find the area and perimeter of squares and rectangles on the coordinate plane. You'll need to practice several important skills to solve these problems, so let's get started. Ordered pairs tell you where a point or object is on your coordinate plane. Ordered pairs are always given in the format x, y. For example, if we wanted to plot the point -4, 3, we would first find -4 on our x-axis, and then find 3 on our y-axis. Where these two lines meet is where we would find our point. Area covers the space inside of a shape. The formula for how you find the area of a rectangle or square is length times width. Basically, we are multiplying the two sides together. In this example, we have a rectangle with a length of 2 and a width of 5. Therefore, using our formula, we will plug in 2 for length and 5 for width. Finally, we multiply 2 times 5 and we get 10 square units. Now let's review perimeter. Perimeter is the distance around a shape. Think of a fence that surrounds a shape. For rectangles and squares, the equation for finding the perimeter is 2 times length plus 2 times width. Another strategy that you can use is to simply add all of the sides together. In this case, we have a length of 2 and a width of 5. When we substitute 2 in for length and 5 in for width, we get 2 times 2 plus 2 times 5. Following our order of operations, we multiply first and have 4 plus 10, which gives us 14. Therefore, our perimeter is 14 units. Now we're going to put this all together to solve a more complicated problem. This question says, graph rectangle QRST with the following vertices. First, let's graph each one of these points. We have Q at 3, 7, R at -9, 7, S at -9, -1, and T at 3, -1. When we graph all of these together, you'll see that it creates a rectangle. Now that we have our rectangle, we will answer the following question. What is the area of the rectangle created by these points? In order to solve this, we need to determine the length and the width of the rectangle that we've just created. We can determine the length by finding the absolute value of the difference between the y-coordinate of R and the y-coordinate of S. In this case, we will find the absolute value of the difference between 7 and -1, which is 8. We can think of this as combining the distance from 0 to 7, which is 7, and the distance between 0 and -1, which is 1. This means that we cover a total of 8 spaces to get from 7 to -1. Another strategy that we could use would be to count the spaces on our coordinate plane to confirm. To determine the width, we can find the difference in our x-coordinates between point R and point Q, which are -9 and 3. The absolute value of the difference between -9 and 3 is 12. We can think of this as combining the distance between -9 to 0, which is 9, and the distance between 0 and 3, which is 3. When we combine them, we get 12. Again, the counting strategy will also work here. Now that we have our length and width, we can substitute the values into our area equation. We substitute 8 in for length and 12 in for width, which gives us 8 times 12. 8 times 12 is 96 units squared, which is the solution to the area of our rectangle. Now we will look at a perimeter example. This question says, graph rectangle ABCD with the following vertices. We'll graph A at 7, 6, B at -6, 6, C at -6, -5, and D at 7, -5. Altogether, it creates this rectangle. Now that we have our rectangle, we will answer the question, what is the perimeter of the rectangle created by these points? Once again, in order to solve this, we need to determine both the length and the width of the rectangle that we've created. We can determine the length by finding the absolute value of the difference between the y-coordinate of B and the y-coordinate of C. In this case, we will find the absolute value of the difference between 6 and -5, which is 11. We can think of this as combining the distance from 6 to 0, which is 6, and the distance between 0 and -5, which is 5. Therefore, the total distance is 11. Another strategy that we could use would be to count the spaces on our coordinate plane. To determine our width, we can find the difference in our x-coordinates between point B and point A, which are -6 and 7. The absolute value of the difference between -6 and 7 is 13. Similar to our length, we can think of this as combining the distance between -6 and 0, which is 6, and the distance between 0 and 7, which is 7. When we combine these numbers, we get 13. Again, the counting strategy will also work here. Now that we have our length and width, we can substitute the values into our perimeter equation. We substitute 11 in for length and 13 in for width, which gives us 2 times 11 plus 2 times 13. Following our order of operations, we get 2 times 11, which is 22, plus 2 times 13, which is 26. 22 plus 26 is 48. So the perimeter of this rectangle is 48 units. Thank you for watching.